Hello everybody, welcome to Documentary Film Editing Masterclass Week 2. Just getting everything organized and ready here for you guys so we can have a nice interactive session showing what is possible in the editing using Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve software. But yeah, thanks for joining us. This is Week 2, we got 4 weeks in total. You can rewatch these sessions right from this link that you're on. So that's the great news. So don't worry about taking notes. Really just sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation. And we'll have you can always ask any kind of questions that you might have. I'm just going to put my email in the chat. You can email me directly, tom@tbmcs.ca. And the great news is that we have the iMac computers. So they're loaded with Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve Studio, the full version, and Fusion Studio. So, we have more workshops on those softwares coming up, but those iMac computers will be available directly at our library partners. So I want to thank all our library partners on this project. So we have the Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, and the Wasaga Beach Public Library. I want to also thank the Canada Council for the Arts for the project funding to make this Creator Space project happen. So really happy for to have this whole group together that we can do this. And again, please, once the libraries have access open again, you'll be able to go and check out the iMac computer. So in case you don't have the fastest computer, or you're using an iPad or something that you don't have a desktop, don't worry, we have you covered. These iMac Digital Arts computer stations, there's 2 in each library, and you'll be able to take book time and go to the libraries and work there, which is a great resource. So we hope that you can enjoy that as well. So everything we're doing here, you could access like that. Now, the great thing is all the stuff we're doing too is Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve is free. So version 17 is what we're on, and that is a free software that you can download as well, and just use from the comfort of your home on a desktop as well. So there's plenty of opportunities to use it. So it's free software, but you can also use the studio software at our library partners. Again, if you don't have the strongest computer, so we usually recommend for video editing nowadays, if you're going to be working in like 4K or full HD, you really need to have about 32 gigs of RAM is our recommendation. 16 gigs would be a minimum. And so we have that on our iMac computers at the libraries. And that will get you going. And then also, we work with either solid state drives or RAID drives. So those are really great aspects. So if you're doing a documentary, like, hey, what kind of drive can I get? You want to start to get things that are at least USB-C, Thunderbolt 3 type drives. There's some really great ones. Like these ones, there's like these solid state drives, 2 terabyte and different sizings that you can then use as an external drive, plug it in. It's USB-C or Thunderbolt 3 compatible, and that gives you fast read-write speed. That's really what's important, is the reading speed for computer digital video editing more than the actual write speed, because once you have the data on there, but usually they're correlated, so you need really fast read-write speed. So a little bit on the technical side there. So again, if you have questions, ask me about that too. So what's the first thing? So what we need to do is we've watched interviews. So if you're participating in our documentary production masterclass, then this is going hand in hand. So right now we're on the point of filming interviews. So as editors, we get to see those interviews once they're filmed. We get the footage, and then we need to work with it. So last week we talked about importing the footage, organizing it, adding audio, syncing it. So we kind of went into a complex scenario where there's more complex audio that needs to be synchronized together, multi-track and multi-camera. So wanted to show that kind of aspect. So now we're going to look at footage of an interview shot in a documentary production masterclass that we did in 2020, early 2020, and it will showcase what we'll do is, so we're going to assume the idea that you've worked on viewing your footage or your rushes, and we talked about that last week, is that there is the A roll and B roll. So A roll, that's all your interviews. And that's our first focus, is just working with the A roll. So it's a little bit different than some other type of editing, because in like narrative film or like commercial type thing or music video, you're working with like all your shots right away, but you also need to usually assemble in some way. So those of you who are familiar with narrative editing, I'll equate it in this way. So if you're taking the narrative editing approach, usually what we do is do some sort of an assembly with what's called the master shots, or the main takes, or the main setups. The master shots are usually one whole shot that covers the scene. So that's usually a typical way, is just to assemble that and get an idea of how does the film flow scene by scene by scene. So sometimes a master shot might mean you have to use a couple different angles to put together one thing, but you're not really doing the fine details. So just that kind of assembly. This is the same idea now, is we're going to take that A roll kind of as a master shot, figure out kind of the best highlights and selected moments of an interview, putting that together, and then, from there, continuing the work. So what we've done is we've watched our rushes, we have some notations, some ideas of, what we like, and some ideas of what we like. But I'm going to actually show that process as I go through. So this is another technique where, I urged everyone to watch through, if you shoot an interview, and again, even get, if you film a practice interview, just with some family member, friend, film something for 10 minutes. And it's amazing how when you watch it back, there's all these details that you don't even realize, even when you're sitting there, that you forget even happened, or statements that happened. So that's that fresh eye perspective. So even though you might be directing and producing your own documentary film, you want those fresh eyes to really be able to watch that footage and figure out the footage, and just get the fresh perspective. What is the story that's in that footage? So you watch it, you get familiar with it, and now that you're familiar with it, you can then go back and extract the pieces. So there's a couple ways to do that. One way is you can watch the footage and do what's called a paper edit. And you can literally on paper say, I like time code from this part to this part. Now time code, just to reference, is the notation, the numbering system in video and film, and it represents hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. So it's very accurate in pinpointing that, at 1 hour and 12 minutes, 32 seconds, and 12 frames, you might like that part of the interview to, 25 seconds later. So you can write this all down on paper and actually really quickly find it when you go back to edit. Some people like to do it that way. Watch, write down notes on paper. And time is a luxury in editing. So the more time you can spend with your footage, be familiar, take those notes, think about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, that is fantastic. And that's a really great approach. So if you can take the time and really, do things, explore things, it leads to a fantastic result and a real thorough knowledge of the footage you have. But on the other hand, oftentimes as indie filmmakers, we might have a crunch deadline, or we have a film festival, or we need to get it done for a certain event or a certain premiere time that's happening. So that means we might have to go a little bit faster and a little bit on the shortcut side. So that's my goal here, is to show a little bit of both sides of how we can do this. So that's what we're going to look at today, is how can we watch and extract footage into an assembly edit. And this is a great way where you kind of combine that idea of watching your footage and taking, that paper editing concept, watching it and extracting footage to quickly and effectively, efficiently put things down into a timeline that would be called an assembly edit. And those are essentially your highlights of the best of that interview. And then you can continue from there. And that's a really great way to do it. So it's kind of combining that watching at a paper edit and assembly edit into one process, so you can work faster. And this is the whole beauty of digital arts technology, is that we can combine a few processes in that way. But I like to always talk about the idea of historically how it would be done. And if you do have time, it's ideal to watch through your whole footage, really get familiar with it first, and then we'd go into this kind of step as we're doing now. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so here I'm just going to flip around. Let's escape the full screen here. And we're going to get right into our DaVinci Resolve project. So I got the whole project built up right here, just like where we were last week. So we did, we had a couple of these multi-camera clips that we did some synchronizing on. We linked them. And then we have our interview that we did in the masterclass production with Kita Inoue, a photographer based in the Blue Mountains. And that was photographed and as part of a masterclass in production. So that was done, and that allowed us to work with the masterclass attendees, the students, to look at how to shoot it and then do put it together from there. So we have this raw footage. So I'm just gonna, like, again, if we're in the edit mode right here on the bottom, you'll see, and let's go right to the beginning here.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Do you have any particular cameras or lenses that you prefer for your style of shots?
I only have one body of camera, which I...
Okay, so what we can do is, now what I can do is I can simply take, I can use my I and O buttons, and I'm just going to I have this little quick shortcut key here. These things are great. You just put these on. It gives you the quick commands as well. These things you can just buy like online, like Amazon and other sources, and you can just get a DaVinci Resolve basically skin for a keyboard that gives you some shortcuts as well. But what we're going to work with now really is the I and O, in, out, and we can do this as we're watching the footage. We can just hit those to select our in and out point. So I'm just going to go through this, get some highlights, and what I'm going to do too is create a master cut. So under master, I'm going to do new bin, and I'm going to do Kita doc cuts. Okay, and then from there, I'm going to do is create a new timeline. So create a new timeline. It's also Command and N to do that, and I'm going to say Kita doc assembly edit 1. Great, so now I have a blank edit. That's fantastic. And I'm going to go back to here. And now I'm going to do is watch it, mark in and out points, and then I'm going to basically, I can either drag it down or I can do what's called an overwrite here, which is also F10 as a shortcut. So here we go, let's watch it. Spacebar to play and pause. So here it is right here, start, stop, spacebar, and let's do it.
Cameras or lenses that you prefer for your style of shots.
I only have one body of camera, which I use, which is Canon 7D. I haven't tried any other camera bodies, so but that's what I need. That's the only thing I need right now. Once I become more professional, I might add more bodies. And then the lens I use 35 and wide angle lens, just 2 lenses.
Cool. So that gives us like a good quick intro into his technology, his process, camera bodies, what he uses. So then you can take this and just drag it down, and it drops it down into the timeline. So now we're starting to assemble it. So we're getting rid of those pieces that are like, the before and after. We're just putting his answer. So we're getting rid of like minutes already. And that's really key. So we're trying to just assemble together the quick things. I'm going to do Command Z. So the other way we can do this is we can also do the F10, or we can do an overwrite down there, and it's going to drop it down as well. So either option works. Okay, let's continue watching. Spacebar.
Have you noticed any change in how you see a shot as your style has changed or developed over the years?
How my style's changed over years?
So I'm gonna so now we can use the JKL, so we can go like backwards, and then K stops, and then L goes forward. And it's a quick way that scrub go back and forth and find your endpoint.
Every time I'm asking
So I'm gonna mark an in right there. He says every time.
Every time I go to the same location, I see something different. So it's never the same. And for different seasons throughout the year, same place looks different. So it's never the same.
Okay, so that's great. And we don't have to worry necessarily about the director saying anything there. We can deal with that after. So assembly, we're just getting these highlights. So I like that soundbite. That's good. And again, I'm taking, I don't want to say that I'm taking all of them, but right now it's a short interview clip. So those two parts are good. I got rid of the beginning where he goes, well, how has my style changed? I don't feel I need that because I watched this before and I'm like, I don't really feel that intro is important. I get right into the juice of the story right there. So I'm going to add that. So I'm just going to overwrite that in right there, and that brings it in next to it. So I'm going to click on this again. You can see that the timeline has all my shots, one after the other. And then my take one is the continued raw footage of the interview. So spacebar to continue.
How would you define obsession as it relates to your motivation to capture images?
Obsession to me means
So I'm going to start right after the ah and say, okay, obsession. So I'm going to mark hidden I right here. So I'm going to go I. And you can see it marks the in right starting from there. And now I'm going to hit spacebar to play.
obsession to me is tenacity. Repetition brings, I would say perfection, but brings out the opposition that I pursue. So,
That's great. Okay. So that's an interesting, so that could, it almost sounds kind of it could lead into some of the process or the kind of the ending of the documentary, right? So it's a great soundbite. So again, these are not in any particular order. We're just putting them down here. And then what we're able to do is we can flip these around as an assembly. Like for the assembly, we just want the best of. That's all our goal is really, just to get the best of a few of these shots. Once we have, a couple minutes of an assembly, then we can start fine tuning it, looking to kind of do a, maybe minute and a half or something final edit. So again, just the A roll, the interviews, and we continue from there. Okay, so that's our take one. I don't know if there's anything after that. I think that's it. So let's go to take two. Go right from the beginning. Same process. I'm just going to play it through, mark in and out points.
When you're shooting out on a shoot,
So the other thing too, what we can do is we can also make these put these like markers in footage as well. So you can you can change these little marker points and things, so you can put like flags, and that's done with like M. Right, so now you have a marker, and this is another way. So we can, just to show different ways, so we can take the marker and we can have like marker one, and now I can go to that marker, and here I can say talks about process, for example, right? So now I have that marker, and it's easy for me to just go to it. I can see that on the timeline. I can do different colors of markers and so on.
do your images have meaning other than the literal image?
I don't tend to put literal meaning to my images. Each viewer feels their own emotion, and I tend to rely on that. So, but I see a perfect shot, and I shoot it, and the rest is to the viewer's interpretation.
Right, so that's a nice soundbite from there. Right, so you can see, so that, we can talk, we can, rename this, talks about meaning. Right, so that's how we could pre-do these, where we put the marker points in, and we go, okay, that piece is this piece, and this piece is that piece. And then here,
Yeah, because every
Take your image how you see it, and then
so here, let people interpret, right? So I'm going to put another marker here, right? And then continuing on people interpreting photos, right? So that's another marker. So that, see, we can keep marking things this way too, and then go back to it and do the edit. So what we'll do now is we're just gonna, we're gonna overwrite right there. And we got a marker point right here. We're gonna get rid of that one on the timeline. We don't need that. Okay, and And you can see what's happening is we get the take two starts to give us the marker points here. So we can actually go to them. It's like, essentially like sub-clipping. So it's a great way to work on the whole sequence. So it gives us our clip, plus it gives us those marker points. So that's a great pre-editing process. If it's a really long interview, these aren't that long, but I just wanted to show you guys that marker process.
Yeah, because every single viewer has different interpretation. So that's part of the fun to listen to how they feel, what they see. So, yeah.
Okay, and again, I'm not so worried about when he says so, yeah, and these kind of other nuances. That's okay. We're gonna fix that up later. So going back to that take.
Do you ever watch when you're in a gallery, look at how people respond to a painting?
That's the best part. I actually listen to what they have to say, and it's always different. So that's fun.
Okay. I don't know if I'm not too.
Is there a typical response?
I don't think we need that part.
They think it's something they've seen before. It could be the house they were brought up, or their grandparents' place, but it's never the actual house. But something in their mind resonates with their memories. So
That's a cool one. So I like that. That's almost like a good kind of maybe ending or conclusion again. So I'm just going to drop that down into the timeline. So you can see we already have about close to 2 minutes of some select. So let's go over to take three, and we'll just watch a little bit more here and get a few more. So we have a good assembly put together.
As an artist, what inspires you as a photographer?
Well, this area I live in is full of wonders, and if you drive around, there's so many things you want to shoot as a photographer. Even if you're not a photographer, a lot of things that you stop and just wonder why these beautiful things around. So that's all we have to do, drive around and go out there.
Okay, so that's cool. So again, I'm just going to drop it down. We're not putting anything necessarily in an order, right? So marking just in and outs. So just again with the I and O as we go. And let's spacebar. I'm going to continue playing.
Your photos are visually and emotionally captivating and filled with wonder. What is your intention when composing or editing?
Editing part is just I want to bring in more impact. So I might boost some colors. I might boost sharpness, or even lower the sharpness sometimes to bring focus on the subject I want to showcase. So, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're editing and composing or editing a photo, maybe you don't even know while you're editing.
Okay, so that's good. We don't really need any of that. Let's start from here again.
I tend to follow a certain style of editing because I don't want to look all the same as other photographers. So I just try to bring a uniqueness to my photos. That's why a lot of people think they might be paintings because I make them look like paintings. So that's just the style I'm interested in right now.
That's cool. We'll start to get into the editing and the style concepts there. So we're going to add that clip. Let's continue watching a bit more here.
Beautiful. Okay, when did you know you wanted to be a photographer?
I wouldn't call myself a pro photographer. I'm semi-pro. I always liked photography. I was surrounded. My parents were into photography. They were always taking photos of things around them and taking shots of me as a child. So there were always cameras around, and I started taking photos when I was much younger and just kept shooting. And it's still, I'm shooting all the time. So there's no timeline where I thought I'll be pro or semi-pro. It's just a continuation of my hobby. So it's, I still consider it as a hobby because I enjoy it.
Sweet.
Okay, so that's great. So that's an out there, and we'll drop that in. And then, you know, so we keep going to make that, you know, process. So let's go to another next part.
So do you find that your parents' photography, did that influence you? Or
So again, we're getting this to all come together and, you know, figure out how we can, you know, make that assembly. So now we're at about 3 minutes. We'll get a few more shots in so we can keep that process going.
do you have your own style independent of your parents?
Just to be curious about things around you, that's I learned from my
Style independent of your parents.
just to be
Let's
just to
play
be
here.
curious about things around you. That's I learned from my parents taking photos because they carry their camera all the time wherever they went. So sometimes they're just nothing important or nothing beautiful, but the fact that they always carry their camera around because you never know what you find. So that's why I use it as a mantra now. Wherever I go, whenever I go out, I always carry my camera.
Okay, so that's beautiful. We'll add that in. And next part.
What life lessons, if any, have you encountered from your own images and journey as a photographer?
What I learned about my photography, it keeps changing. It's a very living thing. Even though I look at the old photos I took before, there's always something that can change or that can improve. That's the beauty of digital photography. You can always go back to old images and enhance or try different styles. So that's an ongoing process. I never let the old photos stay the way they were. So I'm always revisiting the photos that I took.
Actually, that would be interesting.
So that's cool. That's a really interesting, and that's maybe even like a pretty good like concluding statement, possibly as well. So it's you know, it could be a cool way to end our short documentary.
Interesting to see a before
So I'm just gonna play through to the end of this take, and we'll get whatever's left in it.
Mhm.
decade and how you would edit it.
Yeah,
Like
that's
10 years
part of my obsession is coming from. Like I always want to try different things, and you always learn new techniques. So
Great.
Okay, and again, I'm not too worried if there's a little bit of the director speaking too. We're gonna fix that all up when we get to the next cut.
Last question.
mhm.
If you could travel back in time, what would you say to your younger self as an aspiring photographer?
Never. There's no mistake in photography. There's no bad photography. You just have to be true to what you want to take photos of. Just find the passion, find the things that you want to photograph, and just stick with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a really nice kind of ending. Even though we don't get the context where he says, you know, if I was going back to my younger self, what would I tell them? It's a really nice possible conclusion as well.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could go on and on. Your life personally, aside from how to live life differently or better, or
Well, I think I'm came more attention to nature because I take photos of landscape photography. So I always try to pay attention to the surroundings, especially nature, and especially where I live in. And of course, without your family support, it's not easy to do what I do all the time. So having support from your family and pay attention to beautiful things I have around here. Yeah.
Perfect. So that was just kind of a little extra. So we'll grab that. So there we go. We have about 5 minutes of an assembly edit. So that all I'm doing again is just taking those in and out points, spacebar to play, and then I'm overwrite editing, getting those clips down into this timeline. And then you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 sound bites. So out of that, I might end up with, the next reduction will probably take about half of those out or reduce them. And that's the ongoing process, is to take that. So we've watched the interview, we're taking these key sound bites. We might use all of it, we might not use all of it, getting the key moments. So again, if you imagine if there was a 30-minute,
I only have one.
Length of an interview, right? We do the same kind of thing. 30 minutes, maybe take it down to about half. Then I kind of take it down to another half, and it's kind of an ongoing thing. And then you're really getting those, the diamonds in the rough. We're right now we're in the rough, and then we're trying to find those final diamonds in the editing as we continue from there. So the assembly, we want to keep it pretty loose. So about 5 minutes. We're going to probably look at cutting this down to more than 50% removal of this, and figuring out what do we really need. What's the essence here? What can we tell in a few minutes, or a couple minutes? We're trying to do. So let's just watch it back now.
I only have one body of camera which I use, which is Canon 7D. I haven't tried any other camera bodies. So, but that's what I need. That's the only thing I need right now. Once I become more professional, I might add more bodies. And then the lens, I use 35 and the wide angle lens, just 2 lenses. Every time I go to the same location, I see something different. So it's never the same. And for different seasons throughout the year, same place looks different. So it's never the same.
That's great.
Obsession to me is tenacity. Repetition brings, I wouldn't say perfection, but brings out the obsession that I pursue. So, yeah. I don't tend to put literal meaning to my images. Each viewer feels their own emotion, and I tend to rely on that. So, but I see a perfect shot and I shoot it, and the rest is to the viewer's interpretation. Yeah, because every single viewer has different interpretation. So that's part of the fun, to listen to how they feel, what they see. So, yeah. They think it's something they've seen before. It could be the house they were brought up, or their grandparents' place, but it's never the actual house. But something in their mind, resonates with their memories. So that's, yeah. Well, this area I live in is full of wonders, and if you drive around, there's so many things you want to shoot as a photographer. Even if you're not a photographer, a lot of things that you stop and just wonder why these beautiful things are around. So that's all you have to do, drive around, and they're all out there.
Yeah.
I tend to follow a certain style of editing because I don't want to look all the same as other photographers. So I just try to bring a uniqueness to my photos. That's why a lot of people think they might be paintings, because I make them look like paintings. So that's just the style I'm interested in right now. I wouldn't call myself a pro photographer. I'm semi-pro. I always liked photography. I was surrounded. My parents were into photography. They were always taking photos of things around them, and taking shots of me as a child. So there were always cameras around, and I started taking photos when I was much younger, and just kept shooting. And it's still I'm shooting all the time. So there's no timeline where I thought I'd be pro or semi-pro. It's just a continuation of my hobby. So I still consider it as a hobby because I enjoy it. Yeah.
That's great.
Just to be curious about things around you. That's I learned from my parents taking photos because they carry their camera all the time wherever they went. So sometimes they're just nothing important or nothing beautiful, but the fact that they always carry their camera around, because you never know what you find. So that's why I use it as a mantra now. Wherever I go, whenever I go out, I always carry my camera.
Beautiful.
What I learned about my photography, it keeps changing. It's a very living thing. Even though I look at the old photos I took before, there's always something that can change or that can improve. That's the beauty of digital photography. You can always go back to old images and enhance or try different styles. So that's an ongoing process. I never let the old photos stay the way they were. So I'm always revisiting the photos that I took.
Actually, that would be interesting.
Part of my obsession is coming from like I always want to try different things, and you always learn new techniques. So yeah.
Great.
There's no mistake in photography. There's no bad photography. You just have to be true to what you want to take photos of. Just find the passion, find the things that you want to photograph, and just stick with it. Yeah. Well, I think I'm.
Cool. So in watching this, I was just taking notes and you kind of the segment pieces. So I just have them like numbered down, and I literally just like, put down kind of some notes of, the kind of the order. So I'm like, I'm going to use number, 6, 9, 7, 8, 11, 13. And that's kind of going to be my assembly. That's how, you can work that way, other ways, notes and so on. But I like to, as I watch, I'm kind of thinking of the story unfolding in my head and, how I'd like to see it unfold. So what I'm going to do is I'm just selecting all of these. I'm just going to move them over down the timeline. And then what I'm going to do is just take, each piece. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I want to start with 6. So I'm going to put 6 first. Then I said, let's start with number 9 next. So 7, 8, 9. Then I put number 9. And then I'm going to put number 7. Then I like number 8. Okay. And again, I'm just making some space. I'm just dragging these over. And then I liked number 11. And I wanted to end with number 13. And the last one being 14. And again, nothing is destructive. So it's just great to, you can keep these other ones here and the assembly edit. But now, look at that. From 5 minutes, I'm down to 3 minutes. And that's going to be like my first assembly edit. So, I took those highlights from watching the overall raw interview, and then I bring it back down into this kind of reasonable piece. So let's just watch this now, just when it's cut down, see how this flows.
Well, this area I live in is full of wonders, and if you drive around, there's so many things you want to shoot.
I grabbed the wrong one. I want to start with number 6, and that seems to be number 7. Let's just see if this is the right one.
They think.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to start with. Kind of the magical, they think, yeah. So number 7 isn't what I wanted, so grabbed the wrong one. Sorry about that.
They think it's something they've seen before. It could be the house they were brought up, or their grandparents' place, but it's never the actual house. But something in their mind, resonates with their memories. So just to be curious about things around you. I learned from my parents taking photos because they carry their camera all the time wherever they went. So sometimes they're just nothing important or nothing beautiful, but the fact that they always carry their camera around, because you never know what you find. So that's why I use it as a mantra now. Wherever I go, whenever I go out, I always carry my camera.
Beautiful.
I tend to follow a certain style of editing because I don't want to look all the same as other photographers. So I just try to bring a uniqueness to my photos. That's why a lot of people think they might be paintings because I make them look like paintings. So that's just the style I'm interested in right now. Yeah. I wouldn't call myself a pro photographer. I'm semi-pro. I always liked photography. I was surrounded. My parents were into photography. They were always taking photos of things around them and taking shots of me as a child. So there were always cameras around, and I started taking photos when I was much younger and just kept shooting. And I'm shooting all the time. So there's no timeline where I thought I'd be pro or semi-pro. It's just a continuation of my hobby. So I still consider it as a hobby because I enjoy it. Yeah.
That's great.
What I learned about my photography, it keeps changing. It's a very living thing. Even though I look at the old photos I took before, there's always something that can change or that can improve. That's the beauty of digital photography. You can always go back to old images and enhance or try different styles. So that's an ongoing process. I never let the old photos stay the way they were. So I'm always revisiting the photos that I took.
Actually, that would be interesting.
Yeah, there's no mistake in photography. There's no bad photography. You just have to be true to what you want to take photos of. Just find the passion, find the things that you want to photograph, and just stick with it. Yeah.
Great. I really like how that's coming together. I think, we have a strong intro of, people think that they lived in this house or it's something that they already know. And then we have that really great ending. So I'm really happy with that. And then in the middle, I think there's some trimming still. But basically we took, 15 minutes of footage, made it into about 5.5, and now we're just under 3 minutes. And we can probably get it down to like 2 minutes. So that's the first goal of the assembly, is really just to, get that raw footage, bring it down. We're watching it in out points. I showed you guys the markers as well. So the markers give you those kind of sub-clip things too. So we did that here in the take. So if you bring it down, you see the notes I have. So they're like little, and then we can go right to them, and it shows me right where they are, which is fantastic, because then I can just grab those again in the future. So, again, multiple ways of working, and just want to, introduce all the different ways. You'll find one that works the best for you. And I can't tell you what's going to work the best for you. You might just like to write it all on paper. You might like to use markers. You might like to watch and extract like I've been doing today. I kind of like doing it that way, is like watch it through fully first, then watch it again because I'm already familiar with it, and without really taking paper notes, but I kind of have my mind notes and going, okay, I know what I like or what I don't like. And then from there, bringing it down into the sequence assembly. Then I watch that assembly, look at an order, and literally I just made the number order, like 6, 9, 7, 8, 11, 13. And I thought, okay, I like that structure, and and it's working. It's nice. And that's the whole idea, is you just think of what your audience, like as a viewer, how you'd like to see the story. And if it makes sense, if that seems engaging, entertaining, and thought-provoking, then you're on the right track, and that's your first assembly. And that's as far as you need to go. So that's your first assembly. And then what we're going to do is, next week, we're going to take that assembly edit and then go into like a rough cut to fine cut of that part. And we're going to start adding B-roll to see how it works, and spacing and tempo and things. But we have our base. And that's really kind of that baseline of putting the shots in there, making it work, and figuring out what the right essence is now of our interview, getting those perfect sound bites so that we can keep working with them from there. So yeah, that's definitely we're on the right track. So go and practice that. Again, if you shoot even a practice interview, and then take that footage, bring it into Resolve, and do this first assembly of any kind of practice interview. If you're working in the documentary masterclass production, then that's the same idea. So go and if you film your interview, once you have it filmed, take that footage, watch it, bring it in like we did in the first week, and then work on to the assembly. So you can just, and these you can rewatch. So don't worry if you're a couple steps, you're still preparing your interview, you're about to film an interview. Don't worry, just you've learned how to do this up to now, so you can come back to this and rewatch them. So there's no rush to do anything too fast. So either way, encourage you to try this process out so you can get to assembly at it in a documentary film, and it's a great method of getting that A roll to solidify it. So at least you got that initial structure, and that's I think really key in the documentaries, getting some sort of a structure. It might totally change. You might go, what, I'm going to go into a whole other direction with it, and there's some other sound bites or some other interview area that you're going to use, or a supporting interview that you might want to include in there, someone talking about technical work and using Photoshop and what the editorial does and how that works. So you don't know where it's going to always go. It might change, but you want that first baseline, that assembly edit that takes you through the initial story and makes some sort of sense so that you can start telling the story and then build upon it. So that's definitely it. So again, you can email me, send me an email, tom@tbmcs.ca. If you have any questions you want to share, if you start doing an assembly of a documentary film, you want to share a cut, you can send me a cut or questions about the software or anything. You can just send an email. I have it up in the chat there, and I'll get back to everyone. Just have a little bit of a inbox overload right now, so I'm getting back to everyone slowly. So just bear with me, but I will get back to everybody who's been emailing me, and you'll get some responses as soon as possible. So yeah, thanks again for joining us. Want to see you guys next week. We got week 3, 4. We'll finish through this whole piece, and you'll see how it totally transforms from just raw footage to kind of abstract into like a really fine-tuned, lean documentary film at the end. So thanks again to all our partners in this. We have the Canada Council for the Arts, and we have all our library partners where you can access this software on iMac computers once they're open, the Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, and the Wasaga Beach Public Library. And thank you to all of you for joining us, and I'll see you guys next week, next Thursday at 2 p.m. All the best.